Fresh wind, fresh.
They are some of the most popular TV preachers in the country.
We're family here.
They urge the faithful followers to donate generously, and in return, the Lord will bring them prosperity.
I'm not going to be going to heaven and be broke when I get there.
And there's no denying some people have prospered handsomely.
Wow.
The pastors themselves.
Somebody's son is going to be set free from alcohol because of your $1,000 seed. Somebody is going to avoid a divorce because of the $1,000 seed. Some girl on drugs whose mama's been praying for her is going to be set free from drugs because of the 1,000. And what I make happen for others, God will make happen for me. You may already have the 1,000. It may be something you put aside for retirement.
Televangelism alone is at least a $2.5 to $3 billion industry, untaxed, unregulated.
That's right. By law, religious groups like Copeland's are exempt from federal taxes, and they don't have to report how they spend their money to anyone.
Amen.
I'm already wealthy. I'm loaded. I got more than enough. I'm a blessed man. I didn't come here to get something from you. I didn't ride here on Delta. I rode here on my own airplane. You understand what I'm saying?
Even when we go off the air, we're still here. Don't let that demon of procrastination keep you from calling when we go off the air. Don't let Satan rob that from you. You need to get your faith out there working for you today, right now.
Brothers and sisters, let me tell you, this is how valuable you are. I think the universe would hide you in its pockets so that you would never be scratched and never receive a ding or a dent.
I'm preaching you just like I would have in the old days, just minus a few characters in the story.
There's no mention of God or Jesus.
Can I get a Darwin?
Prepare yourself for a journey of discovery. The book has been written, the speeches have been done, and now it is time to go between the pages with Jerry DeWitt and Bobby C.
Today's date is July 7th, 2016. This is Hope After Faith. My name is Bobby C., and once again I am joined by my amazing co-host, Mr. Jerry D. How you doing, brother?
Bobby, how are you doing, my friend?
Man, I'm doing really good. You doing okay?
I'm doing good. I paused for a second because I was waiting for Baddest Man Alive. You spoiled me.
Hey, you have no idea how close I came to doing that.
I kind of had that feeling. I could feel it in the spirit. I'm going to tell you, I have never been more proud for just a split second when we moved from the intro that you so brilliantly created to about the preachers, what we're going to call pimps eventually,
right, to
our actual show intro, and it has me preaching. For like a split second, I was like, oh, God, no. And then I was like, no, that's awesome. That sounds great. That really sounds good, because you could feel the I think at least I could feel a real distinction and a real difference between the two.
Oh yeah, you can definitely tell the difference between the two.
Yeah, I think so. I hope so.
Well, listen, guys, if you want to get your questions or comments on the air, you can live tweet during the show at Hope After Faith, or you can join us in the chat room on Spreaker.com. We're seeing Atheist Ian. Nora Legions is here for the first time. It's good to see you, Nora. Todd is in there, and Trav, and we're going to see more people eventually make their way in. So thank you very much for being here and joining us for this week's episode titled Pastors, Prophets, and Pimps. So we're going to talk about those pastors that are making almost $1 billion.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. obviously as the conversation evolves, I think I've got a little bit of a reputation for being just slightly out of sync with some of my dear loved ones in the secular movement when it comes to
Really?
No, say it isn't
What is
so.
this world coming to?
I don't know. I don't know what it's coming to. But so I've got a couple of different opinions on these things, but
Sure.
obviously there are some real ugly pimps in the world. There's no doubt about it.
Indeed there are. It's funny because all you got to do is sit back and watch TBN on Sunday mornings and you can see all the pimps out there pimping for money.
It's pretty disgusting, and what always amazed me about it, even in my most religious and fanatical of days, I would not have associated myself with TBN or anything like that whatsoever. Early on, primarily because of the makeup and and the short pants and so forth. But I'm astounded that it can be displayed so blatantly and still exist and thrive. It amazes me.
Oh, and it does. Well, see, you and I were you had made a comment on Facebook, and I commented on it about Rod Parsley.
Right.
And I loved Rod Parsley. I mean,
oh my gosh, I loved it.
Look, I contributed to his millions because I would buy his CDs, his videos. I mean, it got to the point where I even applied and was accepted to World Harvest Bible College, which is Rod Parsley's Bible college.
Which is kind of amazing. I mean, it really, I know that I shouldn't, and it's kind of sick and twisted, but in a weird way, it makes me love you even more and wished I'd hugged you harder while you were here.
Why is that?
Because you were that much closer to Rod Parsley than I was.
Well, trust me, I never saw him, never met him, but I loved him. And, and the other one that I really liked was Jesse Duplantis from New Orleans.
Right. I don't know why I never got into Jesse. I don't know if it's because he was too close or maybe just he kind of hit his heyday whenever we were the most anti-charismatic we could be at the time. I don't know what it was, but I definitely understand why you would feel that way.
Well, the thing that I liked the most about Jesse was his comedy. Because he, if you can get past the words he uses, the guy's hilarious.
Yeah, he is. He is hilarious.
And matter of fact, he came to Augusta. This is years ago, and he came to Augusta, Georgia. So I took the trip over to see him live.
Really?
Oh yeah, huge church that he came to in Augusta. So I went to Augusta to meet him and to see him, and you can't miss Jesse because he's got that snow white hair.
Right, good preacher hair, awesome preacher hair,
perfect Pentecostal poof. And he come down into the audience. It's funny because he laid hands on me.
Really? You got hands laid on you by Jesse?
I did. And
what is wrong with my world? This is craziness.
So he walked up to me and he put his hands on both sides of my face like he was, palming my face.
Right.
And he looked at me in my eyes and he said, "The Spirit is telling me that God is going to use you to reach millions."
Amen, brother. I'm all about that business.
And I wonder if he was thinking that I would wind up where I am now.
Yeah, man. Hope After Faith, the podcast with 1 million listens a week.
So I've been prophesied.
That's what I'm screaming.
So I've been prophesied over by Jesse Duplantis, and I don't know if you know it or not, but eventually this show is going to reach millions because that's what the Spirit told Jesse Duplantis to tell me.
Dude. Okay, so we take him out of the pimp category and put him in the prophet
category. Yeah, because I don't even have him written down for money because. Like you said, I put him in the prophet category because he prophesied over me.
Man, how absolutely. I'm going to tell you, I know that all of my atheist friends, their skin's crawling when they hear me talk like this, but I'm not exaggerating when I tell you, I'm absolutely, totally enamored with this idea. I mean, I'm really, really crazy. I'm enamored with this.
Why?
Because these people were my heroes in so many ways.
Oh,
you know?
I do know.
Even with all of their silliness and everything else, they were just absolutely my heroes.
Sure.
So they were the famous people. They were the famous people that I was looking up to when I was trying to find direction in the world.
Yeah. Well, I always had a weird feeling about Benny Hinn,
Right.
but when you look at people like Jesse and Rod, and these guys are preaching hot and heavy, and trust me, Rod Parsley could tear a roof off of a place.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Just powerful preaching. And at the time I was like, yeah, baby, that's me.
Right.
So I was like, you know what? I liked him so much. I said, I want to go to his Bible college.
Yes, absolutely.
Needless to say, I never made it.
Well, it's it's good for all of us that you failed to meet that goal at that time.
Yeah,
so
because
I'm happy for you.
Yeah, because I'm supposed to reach millions, according to Jesse. So.
That's right. Why limit yourself with this other stuff?
I don't
Absolutely.
know. Tell you what, there it is.
There it is. There it is. Let me very quickly try something with my mic for 2 seconds.
Go
Do
ahead.
you mind?
No.
Tell me if this sounds any better. Is this any better?
Sounds about the same.
Sounds about the same. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so here is. So that sounds about the same to you.
Yeah, sounds about the same to me.
Okay. So apparently everything is running through a different mic than I thought. I just saw the light flashing, and so there you are. Whatever. There you go.
Whatever works, man. Whatever works.
Whatever it is, it is. So as long as it sounds professional enough to you, then I'm happy with it.
Well, I don't know. I guess we'll see when people in the chat room start yelling at us.
Yes, and why are they not yelling at us yet? What's that about?
I don't know, because you sound good, buddy. You sound good.
That's crazy. I don't even know which mic I'm now using. I think just the iPhone's mic is that good that it's just working anyway.
There you go.
There you go. All very good. Well, I'm glad. I'll just go back and bring us back full circle and say I'm glad that you ended up neither a pimp nor a prophet nor a pastor, but instead you're here with us doing the good work that you're doing.
That's it. And you know what? I never dreamed that my life would turn out this way.
Sure.
This is not something that I saw myself doing.
Right. I was interested in how you got that that encouraging thought, that inspiration to do a podcast in the first place.
Well, because I love public speaking. Love it. Matter of fact, I joined.
And where did you get that?
I don't know. I just always like being the center of attention, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Even as a
kid.
But
where did you get practice for public speaking before the podcast?
Toastmasters International, believe it or not.
Did you really? No wonder you're so much better than me at all of this.
I joined.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. I joined Toastmasters, and within the first 6 months, I was already in competitions, winning competitions. District, regional, and I worked my way up to statewide competitions for Toastmasters. Well, in 2009, I was voted by my club as the 2009 Speaker of the Year.
Wow.
And I've always enjoyed speaking, and I always wanted somewhat to do that for a living. Matter of fact, the whole concept behind competing was to get my face out there in front of the prominent people in the community that maybe I'll be someone that they would be interested to come to their company or something like that.
Sure.
And, well, it didn't work out. So being that I like to talk and hear the sound of my voice, I decided there's a second option, and that's podcasting. And the whole idea of podcasting never really dawned on me until I created the blog, of course, and went on a podcast and fell in love with podcasting.
Right.
And I said, you know what? The guy told me, he said, look, you need to do it even if only one person listens, and you just need to do it. So I said, okay, I did it.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. I honestly did not know your history with Toastmasters. That really does explain a lot about how professional you sound, how quick you are on your feet. It seems like, Bobby, God, like every episode, we've got a little bit of a bromance going on.
I know.
Like we just love up. I'm just like, Bobby, you sound so good. Your voice is so smooth.
And
you're so
silky.
quick on your feet.
And look, had me there in person and didn't even get a bromance. Look at that. God,
well, I think there's photographic evidence to the contrary. I'm going to hold that.
And now it's time to go to a commercial break.
I'm definitely gonna hold on to that.
Oh, I know.
And the photographic evidence is sitting on my phone even now as we speak. And for the right price, it can be yours.
But you better put a big price on that.
Oh, it's going to be a big price.
Okay.
Oh, it's going to be a big price. Oh, listen, I'm not cheap. I remember a while back, David Smalley. I was in Dogma Debate in the studio and on the show, and something came up about, Jerry, what you ought to do is you ought to, for the sake of the secular movement and, changing lives and getting the world out there, you ought to do a fundraiser. And like if we raise like $5,000, you would shave your head. It's like, $5,000? Are you stupid?
You need more than that to shave your head.
You need more than that to shave my head. It would be it's for the children. It's for the children. I'm like, I don't care about no children. $5,000 to shave my head? No way.
$5,000 would buy a bunch of sandwiches.
It would buy a bunch of sandwiches,
Yeah.
but they would all be gone. Those stinking kids would eat them, and it would be over with.
And then you'd be stuck with a bald head.
That's right. That's exactly right. Listen, Paul DeWitt is the only DeWitt that is good-looking enough, tall enough, strong enough, and brave enough to be bald. I have to hide all my insecurities under this preacher dude. So, no, but where that all originates is the idea that there is someone out there who wants to see the photographic evidence of mine and Bobby's love, and they can pay the price.
Boy, y'all gonna need a lot of zeros.
Well, it's on my phone, so I don't know. I don't know if you set the price for my Bobby.
No, I'm pleading a lot of zeros. That's me pleading.
That's you pleading for it. I got you.
Yeah, just ask for the bridge, y'all, and you'll get it.
Oh my God! Yeah, Bobby's love build a bridge.
That's it. We build a bridge. That's right.
Bobby's
all right, buddy. So we're gonna get into our topic and get off this.
I guess so. If I made you completely uncomfortable,
I'm gonna go ahead and climb under the table real fast, and you let me know when you're done.
I will. I'll definitely let you know. Well, so let's jump here to reading out of the book, if you don't mind, and we'll start with the story. As I've said on Facebook, if you have your books with you today, then please turn with me to the story of Jerry, chapter 1, verse 1, also known as page 52. 52. And so, in Hope After Faith, I say, the next day, Brother Richie, a pastor at the Pontotoc camp meeting and the MC of the event, took the reins of the revival from Brother Lloyd. Now, what's important to keep in mind here is that this was really the first big event that Kelly and I attended right after getting married. And we drove the several hours from DeRidder/Rose Pine, Louisiana. And we actually chauffeured Brother Lloyd, our pastor, to this event. So it was kind of a big deal. We felt special, toting him all the way there, bringing the prophet to the meeting. And so, as I go on, we say Brother Richie had an archetypical Pentecostal look, a big barreled chest, huge hands, thick glasses, and a slicked back black hair. Brother Richie was highly respected by Brother Lloyd. He was one of the few guest preachers allowed to take to the podium to deliver a message at Brother Lloyd's church. Brother Richie delivered a grace-oriented God loves everybody message, and afterward, one of the young pastoral assistants told me that he wanted to see me in the pastor's office. As a young preacher, I was thrilled at the possibility of a one-on-one encounter with Brother Richie and rushed to meet him in the church office. There, I found Brother Richie, who had commandeered the pastor's office, sitting behind an imposing desk. He says, "Thank you for driving my dear friend Brother Lloyd to Pontotoc. I'd like to give you something." He rose from behind his desk, slid his hand into his front pants pocket, and pulled out a $100 bill. The gift completely stunned me. As a 20-year-old preacher, the mere thanks from Brother Richie was more than enough of a gift for me. So the $100 bill left me speechless. I walked out of the office in tears, praying and thanking God for this great man's thanks and for his unbelievable gracious gift. The long, costly, nearly 500-mile trip from DeRidder to Pontotoc had made me realize that the $600 in wedding money was far from a fortune. I'd suddenly become aware that money could slip away so easily, and the $100 bill from Brother Richie felt like God paying me back. Does that make sense, Bobby?
That makes perfectly good sense to me.
Yeah. So, if you could, if you could imagine just how absolutely young and innocent we were, I can't tell you what an imposing and important figure Brother Richie was in our lives at that time. We respected Brother Lloyd, and this was someone that Brother Lloyd then respected. So we talk about community a whole lot in the secular movement, but this was a real community. This was a very important figure in this community.
Right.
Now, so I was excited. Can you tell? Can you tell from the book how excited I was?
Yeah, I mean, look, I can't even imagine me being in my 20s, and that was well over 20 years ago, getting a $100 bill.
Right.
That might as well have been $1 million to me.
Yeah, it was gigantic money. Yeah. And I was so naive that as I talk about in the book, the $600 that I had received, Kelly and I had gotten from, family and so forth, as you sometimes do in some wedding traditions. I felt like, we were so far ahead of the game that, I might not ever have to preach anywhere or work ever again. Just go invest this $600 and be wealthy for the rest of our lives. And I know it's probably mortifying, Kelly, for me to be talking about that. But I will say it was over 25 years ago.
Yeah. And $100.
Yeah, and I was young and ignorant. I think we've all established that. Can we all just accept the fact that I was young and ignorant and move on?
Sure, because I was young and ignorant with you. I was in the military making $880 a month, and I thought I was rich as hell.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not just me.
No, I'm with you.
It's every co-host of Hope After Faith, the podcast, was young and ignorant 20 years ago.
There you go.
Right.
That's it.
I go on to say, just after our meeting concluded, Brother Richie took to the stage again to resume his emceeing duties. God told me, Brother Richie thundered to the crowd, that if all of you open your hearts, there could be an offering tonight of $5,000.
Now, how big of a church is this, Jerry?
Well, so this is a camp meeting. So this is in a church building that could set a few hundred. It was a large auditorium, but this is camp meeting, so there's more there than just the church members or the members who belong to that church in that building. There are people literally from all over the state, if not all over the country. Okay. So there's several hundred people there that night.
Okay.
So $5,000 is not ridiculous by any means. It's not a huge stretch, but maybe for that crowd and the wealth of that crowd, it was a big deal.
I gotcha.
Yeah. So the crowd quieted, and a collection among the crowd was taken by one of the assistant preachers. Then another young preacher passed a note to Brother Richie as he was counting the cash. Brother Richie frowned his brow in dismay as he scrutinized the slip of paper. The $5,000 goal had clearly not been reached. The Lord is telling me that there are still people in the sanctuary who can give, Brother Richie continued, his voice becoming stern. And that there are people out there, he paused dramatically, who have $100 bills.
I bet you were livid.
Ooh, my face went a pale, ghostly white. I was horrified. Immediately, a carnal side in me showed itself. No, you're not getting it. You're not getting my $100 bill.
Not my $100 bill.
I'd been set up by Brother Richie.
Yep.
I was a preacher from a small town in Louisiana, but I knew right then that the plan for me to turn over my $100 bill to Brother Richie was, or so that I would be followed by congregants who would do the same. But I refused to budge. The longer I sat in the pews, the more intense Brother Ritchie's pleas became. Even though I feared that Brother Ritchie would hold my refusal to cooperate with his scheme against me forever, I still refused to stand before the camp meeting to fool them into thinking that God had inspired me to hand over a $100 bill. After several more urgent requests for cash passed, Brother Ritchie shot me a cold, hardened look, but I didn't blink. Why? Because I'm the baddest man alive. Then, to my relief, a pair of congregants strolled to the stage and handed two $100 bills to Brother Ritchie. And there is my literary inspiration for tonight's show.
I think it's perfect. First of all, there's no way in hell he'd got my $100 bill.
No, absolutely not.
Because he could sit there and say God's telling him that there's people out there. Well, until God told me to give my 100, I'd have held on to my 100.
You know, it's a really, I will say in the book, by the time it was edited down, and you know, you have to take a lifetime and try to stick it into 280 pages or so. So it definitely makes it sound like it was a little bit simpler on my end than what it actually was. But the reality is that really was a little bit of a struggle, you know, because
Sure.
I really did not want him to think bad of me. And there was a brief moment. There was a brief moment at the very beginning that I was like, almost like, this is one heck of a coincidence.
Right.
You know, God told him 100, and I have 100.
Happened to have 100? Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of a real coincidence because you're wanting to continue to think the best that you can about these people, and
Right.
and that's going to be the beginning of my kind of diverging from the normal, the normal take on this situation that I think a lot of secular people will have. I can defend the believer as they try to think the best of not just the pastors and the prophets, but even sometimes even the pimps.
Right.
It's the same way that you may have a ton of evidence, you know, that someone is doing you wrong, that a best friend, you know, is cheating you or scamming you in some way. But there's a part of you that just really doesn't want to believe that and wants to give the benefit of the doubt for the sake of the relationship, for the sake of what if you're wrong, all kind of things. And so I think we as humans, whether we're rationalists or skeptics or whatever, I think we all do possess the ability to overlook the obvious whenever it's really going to be painful to see the truth for what it is.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
You know,
and that happens a lot.
Sure it does. You know, I remember being in church, and I heard my pastor one time, and I think I've told you this before. They were passing around a plate. The pastor was getting ready to pray, you know, like they always do, and the music starts. And the music's going, and the pastor stands up and says, well, we appreciate the kind that jingles, but we need the kind that folds.
Right.
You know, and
right.
I remember thinking, wait a minute. I thought you gave what you could afford to give, right? To me, he was telling everybody, keep your pocket change in your front pocket, reach in your wallet. We need bills.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and that hurts, man.
Yeah, and he's
that
dictating. He's essentially standing up there dictating what people should give.
Right. And that is bad.
Yeah, and it puts such a terrible, for lack of words, taste in my mouth about the whole tithing thing. You know, he stands up and he tells the story about the lady that only had 1 cent to give and how she gave the most because that's all she had. Right? And then turn around and do something like that. And it's like, wait a minute, that is contradictory to what you just read to the congregation.
It is contradictory, and what's somewhat amazing about all of that to me is unfortunately how easy it is to lose yourself over that situation. Now, I feel like I was somewhat fortunate. I tell you what I did do. All right, I'm gonna make a confession here. I will tell you what I did do. I did over time grow into and find it easier to accept help. Far, far easier than Kelly ever did. Kelly never did get to where she could handle it,
Yeah.
But in the beginning, if somebody came up and was like, hey, brother, here's $10. In the beginning, I would have been like, oh, no, God, no, we'll be fine. We actually live off of oxygen, and Kelly's in the back making me an air sandwich, and, we're going to be okay. We're going to be all right. Don't worry about us.
Yeah.
But then over the course of years of people giving to you like that, it does have the ability of twisting up your head or easing your conscience in those areas, to where by the end I was probably a whole lot more like not at the very end. Let's put it back towards the middle, because I think I was coming back towards myself towards the end. But say in the middle of being like, oh, no, you don't have to do that, but not pushing it ever to the point that they might take it back.
Right.
And being more comfortable with having it once, if they push through and did insist that they give me something, where in the very beginning I might have been really, I guess what I'm trying to say is, after a while I got to where I was no longer embarrassed.
Oh, I got you.
By it.
Yeah.
And there is a certain amount of, of embarrassment that comes from people giving, and,
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, see, it's like Todd said, you're supposed to get 100-fold of blessings in return, but they never told me what those blessings were, though. And it's funny that you mentioned that, Trav, because I was just looking at a Bible verse, Malachi 3:10, because that's one of the verses that you will hear a lot of pastors quote, especially when it comes to tithing. If you don't know it, it says, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be room enough to store it. Right? And they tell this scripture, you have to bring in your tithe to the storehouse and then watch what Jesus will do. And it's like you heard it in the intro I played. The pastor standing there saying there's a woman out there that has a daughter on drugs, but you give that $1,000 gift.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And, she would be free from drugs. And then you think about people like Jan Kraus. I'm pretty sure you remember who Jan Kraus was.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
From TBN. Sitting there with her sweet little soft voice going, dig into your grocery money because God's going to multiply it.
Right.
Give into your grocery money?
Right.
Or dip into your retirement so that you can give that $1,000 seed.
The one that blew my mind, Bobby, was the first time that I saw someone on television, like TBN kind of situation, saying, put it on your credit card.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember thinking, that's not even your money. If you put it on a credit card, that's actually whatever institution is loaning the credit, that's actually their money until you pay it back.
Right.
At interest.
Yeah, at 18 to 24% interest.
Yeah. And so, fortunately, I never did get that bad. But I do see in the chat room real quick, I see someone was asking about, the question was, Jerry, how often did you get checks that bounced? How is that handled? Sounds boring, but I know that I've always been curious. Well, as an evangelist, I can vaguely remember a couple of times that like a check or something bounced. And if I'm not mistaken, it was probably early enough on that we just really just let it go, and because the checks were never huge in the first place. So it wasn't like $1,000 check bounced. It might have been like a $5 check bounced or something. But later on, when I was pastoring, I didn't handle any of that. And so eventually we're going to get to the part of the show where we're actually breaking down the difference, my verbiage just for this show, between pastors and prophets and pimps. Mm-hmm. But very quickly, I would say in the realm of pastors, Grace Fellowship had a rule that the pastors were not allowed to associate with the treasury. You had a treasurer, a secretary, those types of positions. And so you were encouraged as a pastor in the Grace Fellowship to not even know who was paying tithes, who was giving in the offering, and who was not.
That makes sense.
So, yeah, so that you could not be tempted to treat people differently.
Right.
Now, now this only goes so far. You have to be ignorant to not know the difference, between a broken down Pinto, running on a rim, causing sparks as it pulls into the church parking lot, and a brand new Cadillac.
Yeah.
But
sure.
it was still, nothing's perfect, and it was a very good attempt. So later on, when I was pastoring, I had almost nothing whatsoever to do with the finances. So if a check would have bounced, I wouldn't have known anything about it.
Well, see, Hidden Heathen said, how long until the non-denominational churches take on the Mormon practice of tracking finances to ensure that they are getting their 10%? And it's funny that they say that, because earlier today I was watching a video of Creflo Dollar saying that he would have these turnstiles that you walk into his church and you swipe a card, and if you haven't tithed, they tie you down, take you out back, and shoot you.
Good grief.
For not tithing. And he's like, well, if I wasn't covered by the blood of Jesus, that's what I would have done. Right? And he's preaching this. And if you swipe your card and you've tithed, music plays, right? Because you're a tither. But if you don't, they capture you, take you out back, and put a bullet in your head.
What in the heck?
Yeah.
What was that even supposed to, how does that become a thing? I don't that kind of stuff just does not compute in my brain. And I'm sorry that it doesn't. And one of the main reasons that it doesn't is because I've never associated with that level of ministry. Mm-hmm. And, I'm not going to say that I haven't been around some, small time pimps, because I obviously have. I think telling the story about Brother Richie, I'm not calling Brother Richie a pimp.
I would.
But that was definitely a, more pimpish move,
right.
for sure.
He's not a pimp, but he's pimp-ish.
Yeah, pimpish. But so I can't fathom that type of mentality. I can't. And maybe I'm just bragging a little bit, but that is so foreign to me. I don't get it. And so is it okay with you, Bobby? I don't know how soon we are to a break.
We got a while.
But is it okay if I kind of move into these three different ways of talking about ministry?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
So let me first hit the pastors, because I think that's important. I will tell you that. And this doesn't mean that some of them aren't jerks, and it doesn't mean that they're not selfish, and it doesn't mean that they're not illogical, and it doesn't mean that they're not, living in, the wrong century. It doesn't mean that they're not delusional. I'm not trying in any way at this moment to defend religion, okay? Mm-hmm. But what I will say is the majority of the ministers, the local pastors, that level of ministers, I think they were just in many ways, like I was at a time, misguided humanists. That they really do care about people. They really do want to help and grow communities. Their heart is in the right place. It's just their mind is not in the right place.
That makes sense.
And that means a lot to me, that distinction is made. That we don't lose ourselves. Because within the secular movement, I think it's very, very easy to preach to the choir, Oh,
yeah.
And if you ever just really sit down and think about that analogy, if you visualize that preaching to the choir, well, obviously you're going to say, well, yeah, duh, that just means you're preaching to people who already get it. But at the same time, there is a chorus, there is an echo, there's a reverb of that message coming back to you, and it come, it's a, you preach it out to people who agree with it, and they are not just agreeable, but they second what you say and feed that back to you, and that encourages you to continue down that same, dialectical path. Mm-hmm. Well, we can do that in the secular movement.
Easily.
We can beat up on ministers, we can beat up on church people, because most of the people that we get a chance to talk to about that already agree with us, and they just rev us up by, amening what it is that we're saying. And I think it can get exaggerated. I really, really think we can get exaggerated. And of course, these televangelists and such do not help the case at all.
Not at all. No, especially when you have guys like Creflo Dollar, who's worth like $27 million. $27 million is what his net worth is as of 2016, right? So apparently the threat of the turnstiles worked. But now you got to remember, this is also the same guy that came down here and ordered a G650 for $67 million.
Right.
Because he needed it to go into all the world and preach the gospel because his 30-year-old plane was wore out.
Right.
And so if you look at that mentality, when you start getting in, now this is strictly my opinion.
Sure.
But I think when you get to that mentality to where the most important thing in your world is money, you lose the message.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, all right. So let's clarify a little bit and let's dig a little deeper here. You lose the message that we thought was the message. Right? Is that fair to say?
Very fair. Yeah.
Because we came into this very wholeheartedly and in love with the hippie Jesus.
Right.
But if we're going to be realistic about this, in the minds of believers all across the planet, the hippie Jesus ain't the only Jesus that exists.
No.
And we think, so now I'm really gonna stir it up a little bit.
Stir the pot, man.
We think we can pick up the Bible. You and I now as non-believers, we think we can pick up the Bible and try to force Christianity's hand over the hippie Jesus, and read the Sermon on the Mount, which is very hippie Jesus,
Oh yeah.
And say that's the Jesus you are supposed to be representing, or even the widow's mite, or any of those little stories. We think we can pick the Bible up and say, you should be, if you're going to worship any Jesus, you should be worshiping the hippie Jesus.
Right.
And what you're doing now is completely contrary to the message of the hippie Jesus. But then we have to step back and say, of the hippie Jesus that don't exist, that we're pulling from pieces of a Bible that they can just as easily create the Wall Street Jesus out of.
Which is what they've done, because if you listen
Which is what they've done.
Right, because if you listen to how they manipulate some of those scriptures,
right,
it's easy to take any scripture you can just about use and turn it around to use it for something. And what they're doing is they're taking certain scriptures and they're adding their own little bit of mental gymnastics on it. And then all of a sudden they're telling the congregation that, well, according to scripture, you need to give the tithe. The tithe is where all your blessings lie. Right? And you're stealing from God if you don't give the tithe. Like God needs money.
Right.
So he's all powerful, but he, like George Carlin said, he needs your money.
That's right. He does. He needs your money. It's so staying on the pastoral side of things. Let's talk about, do you remember any of the numbers that we went over about the average income of ministers?
Yes.
Do you remember some of those numbers?
Yeah.
You didn't happen to keep up with that, did you?
I didn't keep it, but I remember them. They're from 49 to 79,000.
Okay, was average.
Yes.
Which is still very good money.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good money. Now, then on top of that, it's so awkward to be defending the pastors. Oh my gosh, this is too much of a burden to bear. But I only have to bear it for just a few more moments, and then we can move on to prophets and pimps. But do you remember also what they said the average work hours were?
Yes, the average. I have it right here in front of me. Let me see. Let me find it. Average work hours were between 70 to 90 hours a week. And it's,
so then what does that break down to an hour?
next to nothing, really, if you think about it, because it said most pastors are overworked. 90% of pastors report working between 55 and 75, sorry, I was wrong, per week, and 50% feel unable to meet the demands of the job.
Right.
Right. So I pulled up this article real fast.
Please.
It said the annual salary plus bonus and benefits, 25%, are making about $74,009. And it goes as high as 102. The median income is $90,032. And I remember telling you, that's great money.
Yeah, yeah.
Until you broke it down.
Right.
And I was like, wow, they're getting screwed.
Yeah. So I think it's important. I think if we want to be consistent, then we need to be able to obviously continue to criticize theology, continue to criticize, the negative political effect and thus the negative effects that they have on all of our lives by forcing their religious agendas and those kind of things.
Right.
But at the same time, it probably would benefit us and make our arguments seem more thoughtful and coherent if we were to also factor in that there is somewhat of a humanist and self-sacrificing side to this. The local pastor is most likely not living the pimp life that the televangelist is living.
Oh, no. No. Matter of fact, I can remember the pastor of my church that I was raised in, my hometown church, Midway Baptist Church, Pastor J.C., the church paid him, but a majority of his income came from his job with the power company.
Sure.
He had a full-time job, and then he also ministered as well. And I got to thinking about him and thinking about the money that pastors make. And when you look at the amount of hours that they work as a pastor on top of his full-time job, right. I was like, no wonder that cat's tired.
Well, and I'll be honest with you, this is a place where we're always naked and raw as
Sure.
we can be. I knew I was too lazy for that. I knew I just didn't have the energy for that. I was always doing everything that I could to be just in the ministry, if at all possible, because that's what I felt like I was actually on the earth to do. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, let's stop and think about what is going on, the narrative that is in the mind of not just the believer, but now we're being very particular about someone who feels like they're called to the ministry. I literally believed that the reason that I existed, the reason I existed, I'm not talking about a contingency story. I'm not talking about a plan B or, hey, here's a good idea, Jerry, why don't you go do this? Or you could play hockey, either one, it's all the same. I'm talking about this is what I believed I was on the earth for, the reason that I was alive, and it was to be in the ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And so not only did I want to fight for that calling and for that place, to fulfill my calling, but I also knew how well can I fulfill this calling being so exhausted from two different jobs at the same time. And I did ultimately experience that. I pastored Grace of DeQuincy while also being the mayor's chief of staff, and I had done really well with my anxiety and panic attacks and things like that for a time, but I had lost so much sleep. I had gotten up early so many times and got to bed late so many times and was carrying the stress, not just of my life and my immediate family's life, but all of the church people's lives,
right,
with
the
all
families.
of their... Yeah, all of those other families with all of their heartaches and all of their disappointments, everything from deaths to, unemployment, you name it. That driving halfway to church from DeRidder to DeQuincy one morning, I had such a severe panic attack that I had to literally pull over and knock on a stranger's door and see if they would just let me in the house so that I could sit with them and not be alone, because I was convinced that I was about to lose my ever-loving mind.
Now,
You know.
now this article, and I wish I would have written down the name of it. I just kind of copied and pasted some stuff. Said that 70% of pastors constantly fight depression, and 50% of pastors feel so discouraged that they would leave the ministry if they could, but have no way of making a living.
Right.
So 70% of the pastors are fighting some form of depression, some form of anxiety, some form of, and I understand it now when I sit back and listen to you tell your story, how these guys can get to this. I mean, they are ran so ragged,
right,
that they wound up, getting out of the ministry. As a matter of fact, it says that 1,700 or so pastors leave the ministry each month.
1,700. Think of that. 1,700 leaving the ministry. If there's somebody out there that ends up winning $1 billion lottery, I'm going to tell you, if you want to change the religious landscape of the future, say if you have a long enough vision that you can say, I'm willing to make a major investment in order to know that the religious landscape is going to be different 10 years, 15, 20 years from now, then here's what I tell you to do. Go to every school of theology, every theology major, every person who is studying to be a minister, and pay for them a secondary education. Pay for them a different career path. Just tell them, I'll pay for you to be in computer programming. I'll pay for you to study, physical therapy. I'll pay for you to whatever other thing that you think you might be interested in. You pay for your theology. I'll pay for this other thing. And I can tell you that number of people who are dropping out of the ministry would explode if they had another education and thus another career to fall back on.
Absolutely.
It would explode.
And guys, if you want to read this article, it's www.xpastors.com/why do so many pastors leave the ministry. The facts will shock you. Now, you had mentioned about it, not having another form of income. And it says that that's why a majority of them leave, right? But then you start speaking, you're talking about all the time you spend away from your family. It said 80% believe pastoral ministry has negatively affected their families. 80% of spouses feel the pastor is overworked and feel left out and underappreciated by the church members.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me tell you, I can't tell you how many ministers I have spent time with that seem to have some version. Obviously, I can't diagnose anyone and don't have enough experience with it to even come close to that, but seem to have some form of PTSD.
Oh, yeah.
Because there is a jumpiness, there's an on edgeness that exists in the lives of these ministers, because nobody calls you, nobody knocks on your front door, nobody hangs around after church to tell you something good. you know,
exactly.
I mean, the phone rings after 5 o'clock every day only because somebody is in crisis,
Oh, yeah.
And so just imagine, and this is not an exaggeration, and I can't believe I'm here defending ministry, but, that's where we're at. Just imagine everyone, the feeling that you get at 2 o'clock in the morning when the phone rings.
Yeah, I get the feeling that somebody better be dead.
Well, but you also get the feeling that, oh my God, somebody may be dead.
Right.
I mean, I don't know about you, but when I see the phone,
2 o'clock in the morning, something's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, now we've got so many notifications come up on our phones and stuff that we may be working our way out of that. But let's go old school just a little bit and remember what it was like when you would hear the sound of the phone after you had gone to bed. That was scary as heck.
Yeah, it was.
Oh my God, what is that? What is that? That is a pastor 24/7. 24/7. Because no one is reaching out to you that does not have some kind of crisis or problem. Now, obviously, I'm slightly exaggerating. People do thank you and commend you and those kind of things. But by and large, the only time people walk through the front door is whenever there's something really wrong, or call when something's really wrong. So you're always waiting. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen ministers have to send their family off on the vacation that they've all dreamed about for a year without them, because right before they started to leave, somebody in the church died. Or had to come back in the middle of the vacation, leave their family on the vacation, and them come back and not be able to continue because they had to preach a funeral because somebody died. I mean, it is a grueling job. It really is. That's not to say that it's not rewarding, and this is not, please hear me, don't hate me. This is not to say that they are right in any of the countless ways in which they are wrong, but it is my way of encouraging the humanist within all of us to give them a little bit of slack about whether or not they're sincere.
Right. No, I understand that completely. You know, this says that 50% of ministers starting out will not last 5 years.
Right.
1 out of every 10 ministers will actually retire as a minister in some form. And 4,000 new churches begin each year, while 7,000 close.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So 4,000 churches start, but 7,000 close their doors. And, you know, I'm wondering if that reason is because of what you just said. You know, they're losing time with their family. This said that 70% of the people... said 70% of the pastors do not have someone they consider a close friend, and 40% report serious conflict with their parishioner at least once a month.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Listen, you can't have good friends. All right. You cannot have good friends in many of those communities. Number one, the people that you deal with most regularly are the people that you're pastoring. And you feel a sense of obligation to them to keep, your Superman suit on and never show them your Clark Kent, because they're depending on you. They're depending on you to be the example. They're depending on you to live a life that gives them hope. Now, just think about that for a minute, because this is I'm about to reveal something. Oh,
Will.
I'm about to teach the whole dang world something.
Go for it. We're listening.
I'm not even joking. I'm telling you, this is really profound. Stay with me for a second.
All right, we're with you.
Okay, so if you can grasp what I'm about to say, imagine this. Imagine that you're the pastor and you feel a sense of obligation to be hopeful, to wear a smile, to have a good relationship with your wife, to have a happy home and a healthy family. You feel a sense of obligation to do that, because to do otherwise would be very, very discouraging to the people that are looking to you for hope. All right? You drag your beat up butt up to the pulpit on Wednesday night and be like, my God, I don't know about the rest of y'all, but this week already sucks. Woo. Jesus. I'm telling you what, this living for God thing, I'm thinking about maybe taking up drinking. Maybe, I don't know if I can handle this. I thought, beating the heck out of my wife this morning was going to make things better, but somehow it made it worse. My kids are so stupid. I'm tired of talking to them. I look at them and I think, stupid. That's all I can see when I look at my kids. I mean, if you got up and you just poured out your guts and like, oh my God, my life is just so bad.
You wouldn't have a congregation.
Yeah. Why would those people sit there?
Sure.
And listen to that. So this whole thing kind of hinges on, now that's not to say that there's not certain types of ministries and certain types of ways of doing church where people can be open and vulnerable and honest. But I challenge you with this, that can only go so far.
I would imagine, yeah.
Yeah, you can always only be so vulnerable and so honest, right? Let me tell you, if you belong to a church that is so vulnerable and so honest that the pastor gets up on a pulpit and says, Brother Smith, I just want you to know, out of the spirit of honesty, your wife is hot. And I think about her every night after church. You know, now if you're in a place that is that open and that honest, then you might be in a cult.
Yeah, you might be.
You might be in a cult. But what I'm trying to get at is that there is an obligation of pretense. There's an obligation of pretense, all right, of where I have to smile. I have to give you some encouragement. My lifestyle, the minister's lifestyle, has to be of such a character, of such a weight and value, that it encourages the congregants. So everybody with me so far?
Yes, sir.
That facade, as sincere as it may be, is the basis and the foundation on which the prosperity gospel rests. If you didn't start off with that very sincere attempt to encourage everyone else by your own lifestyle, then you couldn't inflate that, exaggerate that to the point of the prosperity gospel.
Yeah.
Because that's the reason these ministers, and now I'm kind of jumping to pimps for a second.
That's okay.
But that's the reason why these pimps can get away with saying the things they can. When that minister in the intro said, you know, I didn't fly here on Delta, I came in my own plane.
Right.
Those people don't. They're not bothered by the fact that they're paying for that plane.
No, not at all.
Because they look at that lifestyle and they say, this minister knows the secret. This minister's relationship with God, this minister's understanding of doctrine has brought him these blessings, has elevated him to this place. He is tapped in to what I need to be tapped into.
Right.
Now just water that down, just kind of let that melt down into something that's a little sweeter and a little stickier and a little more everyday. And what you end up with is me walking to the pulpit with a smile on my face, pretending that my life is better than what it is for the congregation in order to encourage them.
Right. You're standing up there smiling, but you're screaming on the inside.
Yeah, now y'all just tell me I didn't just teach the world something.
Yes, you did. You taught us something.
I'm telling you, I know what I'm talking about. I've been there.
Yeah. No, I tell you what, not only did you teach me something, you taught the young lady standing across from me something.
I learned something too.
Did you learn something?
Yeah, I learned something too. I learned that crawdads come out the ground of Jerry's backyard.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Ashley.
Your contribution is well noted.
Yes,
and
we will note that contribution. Thank you.
And I didn't even teach her that. It was Kelly.
There you go. But you know what? I completely agree with you when you say if you break it down, you're essentially doing the same thing they're doing, except you're not making $1 million to do it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's why it's tricky. That's why it's hard to see the difference, because you're not benefiting from it. I'm telling you, let me just get this out here loud and clear. Did I enjoy standing up in front of people and listening to them clap? Absolutely. Sure. Did I enjoy being a leader? Did I enjoy being in charge? Did I enjoy the attention? Did I enjoy the titles? Did I enjoy all those little pieces? Absolutely, I enjoyed that. But if I were to be completely honest, that was at the absolute most 1% enjoyment compared to 99% of that life sucks. Mm. And that's a fact. Yeah. That is absolutely a fact. Yeah.
Yeah, well, when you think about it like that, and, you know, it is so easy to sit out in the congregation and you're seeing this pastor up there, right? And he's got on a nice suit, he's got on a nice watch. You know, the church is taking pretty good care of him. The last church I attended, the pastor drove it, like you said, a new Cadillac, wore $300, $400, $500, $600 suits, you know, French cuff shirts. I mean, he was a very well taken care of pastor.
Sure.
Right? But when you sit back and you think about that, and you are sitting in the congregation watching him do his show, now I sit back and I wonder, how much of that was just show, and how much of that inside of himself does he hate what he's doing?
And I'm going to tell you, now he may be, obviously I can't, judge him, but
he wound up leaving the church, by the way. He is no longer he's no longer preaching.
No longer preaching.
No.
Do you have any idea what he's doing?
I don't. When I left the church and left religion, I left all that behind. Yeah. But I talked to someone who said that he left the church.
He's probably got a podcast
somewhere, right?
Somewhere.
But now that I hear you mention that, then I think about this young lady saying, "Yeah, Pastor, I can't remember his last name now, is no longer with the church and no longer in the ministry." Now I wonder how much of what he did up there was just for show, and then, 2 years or a year and a half after I left, he's no longer preaching.
Right.
Did it finally catch up with him? Did it finally eat at him enough that he just needed a break? Absolutely.
It easily could have. And here, let me dig just a little bit deeper. Here's another side of this. In many, many, many ways, very often the minister is just as deceived as the people in the congregation, and is just as much a victim as the people in the congregation. I mean, yeah, when we get over to the prophet side, we can say, the prophets, they make up a bunch of their own crap. Mm-hmm. I get that.
Right.
But on the pastoral side, on the normal minister in and out side of things, they didn't make that crap up themselves. It was taught to them. They too. Oh my God, I want to preach so bad. This is pissing me off.
Preach. We'll take a break later. Preach.
That minister that you are, that people are angry at because they see him up on the platform and he's preaching a message that's making little kids cry down at the altar.
Right.
And they're like, "Oh, that monster making them kids." Hey, there is a very good chance that dude or that lady once was one of those kids down at another altar with somebody preaching to him or her that way.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't invent this stuff on their own. It was
No.
fed to them. They're just as much victims. And so the facade is passed on from generation to generation. And so you can be up there behind the pulpit preaching what you believe to be the answer to making people's lives better, while your life is just total crap, and you think it's you, not the message, that it's you. And so you can feel obligated to still preach that message to people literally with the hope that they're going to get it right, even though you're not getting it right. That's how messed up this can be. Oh, man, I'm telling you, this is my favorite episode so far. If I was ever going to speak in tongues, it would be tonight.
Uh-oh. And hey, we still got prophets and pimps to go.
We sure do. We surely do.
We do.
Yeah.
So,
oh, my gosh.
So let's do this. We're going to let Jerry go get him a glass of sweet tea.
Oh, I'm feeling it bad. I'm about to lose my ever-loving mind.
Well, that means that this is only going to get better, y'all. So let's do this. We're about an hour and 7 minutes into the show, and we haven't taken a break yet. So let's take a break. And Jerry, you go get your glass of sweet tea and get ready, buddy, because we're going to attack the whole concept of prophet and pimps next. So y'all don't go nowhere, because when we come back, I got a feeling this is going to get even better. So y'all don't go nowhere.
You're listening to Hope After Faith with Jerry DeWitt and Bobby C.
Visit secularmediagroup.com to see how we're changing the world.
Get in on the conversation. Live tweet during the show at Hope After Faith, or join Jerry and Bobby in the chat room on Spreaker.com.
Get sexy with Dr. Darrell Ray and Secular Sexuality. Only on Secular Media Network.
Previously on Hope After Faith. We're going to do another live show, brother.
I'm so excited. Let me tell you. I mean, I preached probably, without exaggeration, hundreds of messages against religion. Oh, oh my God. The things that came out of my mouth.
Come on. You know you want to do it. Come on.
Yes. You do love me, Bobby. You do love me. Give me my long list.
Get that 300 millimeter lens, honey. Focus in real good.
This is what makes me so furious with the atheist movement. All right, they see a minister, or they see a Christian or a believer of some type doing, saying, being something that they don't like, and they will treat that person as if that person is Hitler and is intentionally trying to exterminate an entire race of people.
Honey, what is this handbasket for? That's what we're going to hell in, honey.
Exactly, that's right. Notice it's a two-seater.
That's our ride to hell.
That's right. Yeah, we got the leather seats just so we'd be comfortable on the descent. Something just dawned on me. Since you are Bobby C,
I am.
I want to be Jerry D. Of course you're here to listen to me, because it's awesome. Because whenever you hear my voice, you imagine my hair.
Do you have what it takes to stump the preacher?
We'll be starting a brand new segment called Stump the Preacher. Several episodes ago, Jerry had me name a person, a place, and an object, and he extemporaneously did a 2-minute sermon using all three things. If you think you have what it takes to stump the preacher, call 630-7DWIT. That's 630-7DEWITT, and leave your name and a message with these three things:
A name, a location, and an item.
If we receive multiple requests, each will be numbered according to when they were received and placed in a hat.
Once a month, numbers will be drawn live on the air by a third party.
If your number is drawn, your message will be played on the air, and if you stump the preacher, you will receive a very nice gift. Once again, that number to call is 630-7DWIT. That's 630-7DEWITT.
Do you have what it takes to stump the preacher?
I'm not afraid. Yeah. It's been a ride. I guess I had to go to that place to get to this one. Now some of you might still be in that place. If you're trying to get out, just follow me. I'll get you there.
All right, folks, welcome back to Hope After Faith. In this next segment, let's try this again. In this next segment,
I said I was going to be the one speaking in tongues, Bobby.
It looks like I'm the one that's about to do it. I get a little tongue twisted sometimes.
That's because me and you's visiting.
Yeah, it's the Toastmasters in me. I get tongue twisted.
Yeah, that's right. Anytime you and I is visiting,
that's right.
Tongues get twisted up.
Now, I don't know about you, but I'm ready to come home.
You should come home, Bobby.
I won't come home.
Come on, Bobby, see. Come home to little old me. I got something for you to see.
Oh, I bet you do, you dog.
Oh, God.
Oh, well, I hope you're still fired up, because in this next segment, we're going to talk about prophets and pimps. And y'all,
I love prophets.
Y'all, I got some dollar amounts that we're going to talk about and all that when we get to the pimps. But first, we need to talk about those prophets.
Oh gosh, I love the prophets. The prophets are my favorite. I'm not going to lie. The prophets are the most interesting. Here's what I struggle with: be anything you want to be, just don't be boring.
Right.
Now if you want to be boring, then that's your business, and that's okay. But just if you can help it, don't be boring. I'm going to tell you, the least boring people on this planet are the prophets. Whether they call themselves prophets or not, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what kind of ministry label they give themselves. When I'm talking about the prophets, what I'm talking about is those people that they're more than just the average minister who feels called to do X, Y, Z, whatever that is. Okay, some people feel called into children's ministry. Some people feel called to pastor church. Some people feel called to evangelize. Some people feel called to blah, blah, blah. Some people feel called to do something that a lot of other people are doing. Okay, that's
right.
Normal.
Yes.
The prophets. Oh, my God, they're the best. I love them so much. Oh, if I could just fill my house up with prophets and just walk around talking to them, it'd be so great. The prophets feels like and I'm sure when I said that, Kelly threw it in her mouth a little bit. The prophet feels like they are called to do what nobody else is doing.
Yeah.
They're it. They are the show, man. They are God's primary representative on the planet, and they are going to find the truth. They are going to dig in, and they're going to expose the truth, and they're going to change the world. They're going to change the church. They're going to change the future. They're going to leave a mark on the world. Matter of fact, chances are there won't be no world when they leave, because they are the end of God's plan. And Jesus is just going to step out of the clouds and say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." High five the prophet, and they're all going to fly off together on a golden unicorn. because
sounds about right.
The prophet, I'm telling you, the prophet, oh gosh. And the reason that means so much to me is because I were one in my own mind.
Really?
Oh my God, you don't even know the level to which I was crazy.
Well, do tell. Share that level, a little bit of that craziness with us.
Yeah, so I think I pretty well give you that sense to some degree, throughout the book, Hope After Faith.
Do. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you get a little bit of it, but you don't get the chance to hear me actually say it and talk about it every step of the way. And this is what blows people away in the book is you would think that every time, like for instance, okay, here's a good example. Here's the difference between a prophet and other types of ministry. When I finally had to accept that the Bible was not inerrant, that the Bible really was kind of man-made.
Right.
Now, I was able to accept that pretty early on in my ministry, like within the first few years or so of my ministry. Mm-hmm. When I was able to accept that for a normal person, okay, say, let's use our terminology for tonight, for the pastor, that would be kind of like, oh, this is a deal breaker. Houston, we've got a problem. That would be the situation.
Yeah.
But for the prophet, like me, it's like, okay, so the Bible is not written by God's hand. Okay, this is interesting. This is a little challenging. Oh, I'm to write the real Bible.
Uh-oh.
That's the level of craziness.
Yeah.
I'm called to go through this big book and find what was inspired by God and what was not inspired by God, and teach those things that were, and to show the difference, and then to bring it all together and to put it into one doctrine so that we can truly know God the way that we're supposed to know God. And it is a heck of a life. Oh my gosh. It is a heck of a life. It is like, you know how you're watching a horror movie, and say like a poltergeist type movie.
Right.
And the supernaturalism only happens inside the house where the poltergeist, is either trapped or coming in and out of dimensions or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Well, but they can like get out of the house, get into the yard, drive down to the Kmart, and there's no poltergeist there.
Right.
Well, that when you're the prophet, you're never out of the poltergeist house. Everything that happens, everything that goes on is part of this huge, large, dramatic, self-centered narrative about your calling and how you're going to change the world. I see one of the people in the chat room just talked about someone calling themselves an apostle. Yet that is a huge part of this prophet level of thinking, to where you can't just settle for being a pastor or whatever other labels that you could go down to the Christian bookstore and buy the lapel pin that already says that.
Right.
You have to be able to wear a label that, you have to have custom made. because you are custom made. You didn't get your calling from a theology school. You didn't learn your theology from a man, but you got this straight from God.
Yeah. Yeah, so in your mind, that automatically sets you above all the other pastors. You're looking down on the pastors going, well, I am above them because I am called by God.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay, I got it. So basically what you're doing is you're setting yourself up on a very high pedestal that only you've put there.
Absolutely. You're setting yourself on the highest pedestal possible because you're above anybody and everybody in those situations. Now, that's not to say that a person might not be brought up in a denomination that has apostles and prophets and different extraordinary ministries, and they might feel like they're, second tier and not absolutely first tier, but at least second tier is better than the lowest tier, which is the normal pastor just pastoring a church.
Right.
So obviously there's all kind of ways at coming at all of this, but in general, in the most general sense, you are on a pedestal of your own making that is above everybody else. Absolutely.
Reverend in the chat room said, are there any prophets who would be nationally known, like a televangelist? I would think that Benny Hinn would consider himself one.
Thank you. That's perfect. I'm so close to speaking in tongues. It's ridiculous. If we were on video, I think I boxed it up. I boxed up some of my books. I still have, let's see if any of the listeners and anyone in the chat room even knows about this book. I still have my copy of a somewhat thin, yellow-backed book by Benny Hinn. Can anybody name it?
No, I can't.
Titled Good Morning, Holy Spirit.
No, I've never heard of that book.
Oh, my God. Oh, this book. Oh, my God, this book. This book is just so outrageous. So outrageous. So it's kind of Benny Hinn's little memoir up to that point of how he became a prophet, even though he may have not called himself that in the book or called him that that way in life, but to be at that level. And it is his very special relationship with the Holy Spirit and how he was called to be at that level of operating in the Holy Spirit. And this is the foundation for the mythology, the ethos that wraps itself around Benny Hinn that would grow to this phenomenon of where he could stand on a platform and wave his hand, and thousands of people would feel as if the Holy Spirit has knocked them over.
Yeah.
All of this ethos grows and grows and grows, into those kind of exaggerations. But you have to. The normal pastor is not. Bless the poor normal pastor's heart. Bless his heart. The normal pastor isn't going to get up on Sunday morning, walk to the pulpit, and think that he can wave his hand, and people fall out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the normal pastor is going to walk to the pulpit and worry if whether or not anybody even notice if he waves his hand, because they're all playing on their phones or are not there, because it can be one of two types of weather. People show up or people don't show up when it's bad weather because they don't want to get out, and they don't show up when it's good weather because they do want to get out. And so the prophet is a total different thing altogether. I see Kevin says, prophet versus pastor reminds me of when certain church folks would deem themselves prayer warriors.
Oh yeah,
as
we had a
way
lot
of
of
life
those in church.
Yeah, and so of lifting themselves above everyone else. That's exactly right. That is exactly what I'm talking about. Here you have just a person in the congregation who may not have the oratorial ability to lead a congregation or be up front, but yet they still have this, and I'm just going to say it, it comes down to it, ambition. They have this raw ambition that draws them to elevation, and this is a new mechanism. This is a not relatively new, but it is a somewhat new to Christianity invention of these prayer warriors that really are a class above all of you other losers, that just get to church just in time and leave right after and don't hang around and pray because you don't really love Jesus.
Yeah, well, see, if you remember right, a couple episodes ago, I was talking about the people who would line up in the front of the congregation, and they were the prayer warriors.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the pastor would stand up on the platform, and he's speaking in tongues or doing whatever he's doing, talking over the music, setting the mood. And it is those men and women that are standing on the floor in front of the first pew that people are going to pray with. They're the prayer warriors.
Right. And they're called to do that. They're called for this intercession. And, you know, and it's another one of those many places where people who don't agree with that type of ministry would say, show me chapter and verse.
Right.
You know.
Exactly. Now, I think another very popular prophet that is still around today, he's old as dirt, but it's Pat Robertson.
Yeah, right. Pat Robertson could be considered a prophet. You know, what's interesting about Pat is that he has handled himself because he wanted to also be successful in the political realm and also not be successful in the political realm. He created a political realm, and also wanted to be successful in business. He fits into that prophet realm because he definitely is elevated above everyone else.
Right.
But he's handled himself in a less goofy way. And I know all of our listeners are going to be like, less goofy way? Are you crazy? I've watched 13,000 YouTube videos of this dude being stupid. Yeah. I know. But that's not even the level of goofy that I'm talking about that prophets can pull off. Listen, David Terrell. I know nobody's going to know that name, and I wouldn't have remembered it if it wasn't for the fact that I was boxing up some of my old junk the other day, and I found some old literature from David Terrell. David Terrell was a tent revivalist, prophet, calling people out, the kind of things that I did as well. And David shook up his following like crazy one time because during his message in front of a huge open audience of men, women, and children, the Holy Ghost told him to get naked.
What?
Yes, sir,
Come on
buddy.
now.
No, and he got naked up on the platform.
Butt naked,
obeyed the Lord, and that was also that's something that you would also see a prophet do, in the Old Testament. You would see them humble themselves in ways like that. And so he humbled himself. It was some kind of test. I don't remember if he was repenting. I don't remember all the backstory, but there was a whole bunch of people fell out with him, and the ones that we were friends with, they got back. Yes. And so now Oral Roberts has come up. Yes, absolutely. Oral Roberts would be in the prophet level.
Big time.
For sure.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. And these people, these people, they're dangerous. There's just no word, no other word for it. They are absolutely dangerous because their mission, and it doesn't have to be a mission that has any sense of humanity in it at all. Their mission can be above and beyond humanistic values of any type whatsoever.
Right.
Their minds. So, yeah.
Yeah, now let me ask you something, Jerry.
I'm ready.
During your time as what you would consider yourself a prophet, was this those times when you were calling out illnesses that people had?
Yes.
Would that be considered prophetic? I guess it would, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that'd be considered prophetic. I guess if you got really, really, really technical, calling out people's illnesses, is the word of knowledge.
Right.
Where being truly prophetic would be a word of prophecy, but I did that as well. The word, the gift of wisdom, all those different things were quote unquote manifested in my ministry. But so here's the cool thing. See, that is a byproduct of being a prophet. That doesn't necessarily make you a prophet. It is because you are a prophet that signs and wonders are following you to bring attention to the clarity and the depth of truth that you have that no one else has.
That makes sense to me.
Does it?
In a weird way.
Yeah.
In a weird, maybe I'm that twisted. But,
yeah, well, but you've
but
got
that makes
experience
sense
with it as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got experience with it, and so
Yeah.
so that's what it was. It was proof of your connection. And this, I mean, the whole time I'm sitting here, I'm just drooling over, wanting to talk about William Branham, who I talk about in the book extensively. If you don't know William Branham, please Google William Branham. I promise you it'll be a rabbit trail that, I don't know, either you'll be glad that you heard the name or you'll hate me later on, for wasting time on it. But, this was, for the 20th century, this was a prophet. This was like few people have ever reached. And what made him most interesting is you're not going to see a lot of humble prophets these days, especially if they make it to the level of television or something like that. You have to have a charismatic, now I'm using the word more about personality, charismatic personality, and approach. You have to be showy, to make it on the television and stuff now. But back in the 60s, towards the end of William Branham's ministry, and it ended in a car accident where a drunk driver killed him. He was a very humble character, very meek and mild character in many ways, and everybody would classify him as the prophet's prophet, because he manifested all of these gifts. He carried himself in a way that was very, very. You would think at that time that if seeing miracles meant that the person performing the miracles really knew God and had something unique to say, William Branham would have definitely drew your attention.
Well, now, I had somebody enter my mind, and this person is not a preacher, but he definitely considers himself a prophet. And I don't throw his name out, and I know people are going to throw up a little bit in their mouth, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. Glenn Beck.
Oh, absolutely.
And he's not a preacher, but he definitely considers himself a prophet.
That's it. That's exactly right. That is a great modern, non-preacher version of the prophet.
Right, because he claims that he foretold these things that are going to happen in the political realm, and you mark my words, this is going to happen, and damn if it don't happen sometimes. but
okay, now I just threw up in my mouth.
But I think he definitely considers himself a modern day prophet.
Absolutely, of course, and even if he didn't add to it the things like, hey, I'm a prophet or whatever, he still would fit into that class of the ideology is so much more important than anything else, and I'm the only one that's got the ideology exactly right. Exactly right.
Well, it's like Reverend said, a broken clock is right twice a day.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And a lot of things in history do repeat themselves, and you can see it's pretty predictable. So yeah, I agree with that. But that is a fantastic. But they are the funnest of the fun. Oh my gosh, they're the funnest. I mean, seriously, if you had to watch Crazy, if you were forced to sit down for 15 minutes, they said either you watch Crazy or we're going to, I don't know, pull your fingernails off or something. Wouldn't you rather watch Crazy?
Oh, yeah.
Like super nutted up crazy?
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, look, if you're going to dive down a rabbit hole, dive down a good one.
Absolutely. No, I mean, they have been my favorite people. I have so enjoyed my time with the prophets. It has been absolutely fabulous. If I could have gotten a time machine and went back and spent time with William Branham, I would have done it without a single question. Matter of fact, as I talk about in the book, I flew all the way to Tucson, Arizona, just to spend time with the guy who had spent time with William Branham. So yeah, that's the way. That to me, those are the most interesting people, but also at the same time the most dangerous. My last little story about that is whenever I was pastoring Grace of DeQuincy, there was this nice middle-aged young lady started attending services with her young son. And as we got to know her, we found out that her husband was actually in prison. I don't know what the crime was, but he was in prison. And she kept talking about that he was getting out and that he had found the Lord in prison. And the church even helped financially to get like some safety cards reissued and different things so that he could immediately go from prison to working in the plants and getting their finances right. And, everybody was glad to do it and was excited about adding this little family to our church. So we were all very excited about meeting the husband. And so the first Sunday morning after he got out of prison, I was up at the front of the church, standing behind the pulpit, reviewing, making sure everything was turned on and working and everything was good. And most of the congregation's already there, so it's very, very, very noisy and chaotic because it's just every noise rattled around inside of that old, Cypress building. And so he comes up at the most hectic moment possible, right before I'm about to start service, and says, "Can I speak to you in your office?" And I'm like, "Well, if you don't mind, we're about to start service. We're ready to start service. Will it be okay with you if we just, talk about whatever you need to talk about immediately after service?" He says, "Well, it's really kind of important that I talk to you before service." Well, it's his first service there, and I'm trying to make sure this family is ministered to. And so, I look at my assistant and I'm like, "Give us just a minute, we'll be right back." So we step like the 20 feet, if that much, to my little office right off of the platform. And as soon as we step in and I shut the door, he looks at me and he says, "You know the two prophets in the book of Revelation?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, I am one."
Oh, no.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, even then, in my heart, I said a whole lot more than, "Oh, no."
You're looking at your watch going, "I so don't have time for this."
Oh, man, I'm just like, dropping F-bombs in my mind,
Okay, so now you have to tell us what his prophetic message was to you, because surely he had one.
Oh, no, it gets worse than that.
Okay.
It gets worse than that. So I say, "Okay." He says, "Well, the reason that I'm telling you this is because," he says, "as you know, in the spiritual realm, the prophet outranks everyone else, including the pastor." I'm like, "Okay.
What are you getting at?"
And he says, "So the reason I wanted to talk to you before service," he says, "if the Holy Spirit moves me during service, even possibly while you're preaching, I wanted to give you a heads up so that you could yield to me." What? And it wouldn't surprise you or throw you off, but you could yield, you could yield to me, to my prophetic ministry. And
sorry, I don't mean to laugh at you.
Yeah. Now you got to remember.
Oh, man.
I was burnt the heck out for a really, really long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was crazy burnt then. I can feel it, Bobby. I can feel it. I can feel this chill running up my back right now as I tell the story. It's pissing me off, is what's happening. and so I'm standing there. And oddly enough, this guy's about my height, but I probably outweigh him by about 50 pounds. And as he's finishing this sentence about I'm going to need to yield to him, I have already envisioned the look on his face when I put my right hand underneath his chin and my left hand behind his head and snap his neck loud enough for them to hear it in the congregation. And I was kind of down, just, I don't know, around my chest area, feeling a little giggly at the surprised look on his face as I broke his neck and watched him slump to the floor. And then I came back to myself.
Yeah, but then, Jerry, you would have known whether or not he was truly one of those prophets because they died and came back.
That's exactly right. Like Raven says, I'd be like, no. Leave him laying there. Give him 3 days.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah, I see that in the chat room. Yeah.
Just give him 3 days and let's put this to the test.
Yeah.
And so
see you Tuesday. Let's try
this.
Right.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
If you come back on Tuesday, I'll yield. I promise.
Oh my God! I'm telling you, not only will I yield, it'll be he will be the guy. We'll name the church after him. So of course I swallow that pain and turn it into I increase the diameter of my ulcer by a millimeter. I swallow that pain, and my mind is rushing because now I've moved beyond being angry to being heartbroken because I'm thinking there's no good way for this to end. There's just no good way for this to end because at the least, he's going to first embarrass me, and then I'm going to embarrass him by not yielding.
Right.
Or at the most, I'm going to have to whoop his ass in service because he won't shut up and he'll be acting a fool. And what's really cool, and I want to give this to the credit. I want to give credit to the members of Grace of DeQuincy and how much they loved me. I'm telling you, I didn't leave religion because the people didn't love me.
Yeah.
I can tell you that there were men in that church that if he would have stood up and gotten out of order, I would have proclaimed him out of order. And I know for a fact that if nobody else, Larry Smith and Bubba Blackburn would have threw him over their shoulders and taken him outside.
Right.
Yeah,
I think every church has those few guys that you're going to get out of line if you want to.
Yeah, but you can depend on them.
Yeah,
you can absolutely. They're good-hearted. They're as good as gold. They're beautiful, beautiful human beings, and they would absolutely risk, getting punched in the nose in order to help you take care of business. Right. And so I'm heartbroken because I'm thinking, we're going to lose this family. There's just no way to save this family. Because this lady's in a bind now, little did she know it, but she inadvertently married a prophet, and you can ask Kelly how good that crap works out,
Yeah.
And so my mind's racing. How do I save this? How do I save this? How do I stall this? How do I deal with this at this moment? And it hits me because I don't know if you know it or not, Bobby, but I'm a freaking genius.
I knew that already.
Did you? Okay,
yeah,
good.
I knew it, man. I am often amazed at your genius.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm rubbing your picture right now.
I know
it. So I have this flash of this spark of creativity, and I look at him and I say, my dear brother, I said, obviously, God revealed this to you, that you are one of the two prophets. Mm-hmm. And he said, oh, yes, of course. Now he's looking down on me. Because I'm just a pastor.
Yeah, you're just a pastor.
Yeah, I'm just a pastor, And so, of course, yeah, sure. And I said, well, then what I need for you to do is I need for you to pray for me, intercede for me, that God will reveal your position to me as well.
Uh-oh.
And he's like, okay. I mean, how do you... I pulled the prayer card on it.
Right.
You can't beat the prayer card. That's your get out of jail free. That's your get out of this crappy situation free thing. Right. Somebody says, hey, would you come over and help us move furniture next Saturday? Well, let me pray about it.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, do you have $5 I can borrow? Let me pray about it.
Let me pray about it. And you never know, the Lord might told me to give you 10.
That's right. Don't be discouraged. Right. Don't be discouraged. And so when I told him that then, and so he accepted that and he walked out and we had service and the Spirit did not move for him to interrupt the service, and we never saw him again.
What? You mean the prophet didn't show back up?
The prophet didn't show back up, nor did his lovely little wife or their beautiful little son. They were gone. Yeah.
Wow. It's just like Kevin said, epic Christian shade.
I'm so uncool. I don't even know what shade means.
Oh, and it's good to see my friend Douglas leave it in there.
Hello, Douglas.
Yeah, Douglas is a friend of mine that I met while he was still, I think he was in Afghanistan or Iraq. I can't remember which one. And when he came back home, I told him I owe you a beer. So good guy. Good.
Wow.
It is good to see you, Douglas.
Excellent.
Yeah. Sorry. I just saw Douglas and had to say hi.
No. We absolutely love the listeners and the listeners who then make their way into the chat room. This is this is one of the most enjoyable parts of the podcast life.
Well, Douglas is a veteran, so my hat's off to you. Yeah, he's at Afghanistan, so he is an active duty soldier. So it's good to see you.
Thank you for your service, sir.
Yes. Yep. So now you ready to let's talk about them pimps?
I don't know.
I need some pimping music, and I didn't even think to bring.
What?
I didn't even think. Oh, wait a minute! I think I might have some pimping music.
Do you have some pimping music? Well, what about that we played the other night?
No, I got it right
y'all were
here.
Over?
Pimping music. This is the best pimping music at all of all.
Isn't it beautiful?
I'm telling you, Gabe, you guys don't know pimping. That's pimping.
That is serious.
That's some serious pimping. So we're going to get into the concept of those pimps.
Those pimps.
Yeah.
So
you all know them.
So go ahead.
Yeah, you all know them. They're the mega pastors that are making millions and millions of dollars off their congregation. One of the prime examples was I saw a video. Now Kenneth Copeland, guys, I don't know if you know it or not. I looked it up today, and as of 2016, it says he's worth $760 million. Okay, now,
Jesus.
Yes. So I saw a video of him flying, hit the fastest plane that he could buy, money can buy, and he got off the plane and he yelled, "Can I get an amen?" Right? Because, and everybody is clapping and just having a good old time because they bought him the fastest jet he could buy. And I'm sitting there shaking my head going, are you serious? You guys are celebrating the fact that you're going to go home to ham sandwiches, but he bought himself a new plane? Mm-hmm. You know, I think you hit the nail on the head, Jerry, when you said that they see him, excuse me, they see him and all of his wealth and all these other people that I'm going to name, wealth, and they think, well, if I can just get as close to God as he is, or if I can just get as spiritual as he is, I will have that wealth too. And they preach that gospel. They preach that God wants you to be rich. You know, God doesn't want you to be broke. He doesn't want you to be downtrodden. You're a child of God, and he wants you to be prosperous. But yet, if we read the Bible says the exact opposite. Jesus said, sell everything you've got and follow me.
Right.
That don't sound like riches and wealth to me.
It doesn't. It surely doesn't. And it truly is a theological quagmire. It really is.
It definitely is, you know, because when you look at these folks, right, and you know, Creflo Dollar's riding around in his Bentley, you know, $250,000 car, you know, and you see all this opulence, right? And I'm amazed at the number of people that don't see it for what it is.
Right.
It's a major pimp game.
It is a major pimp game.
He's the pimp, and the whole congregation are his hoes.
That's right. And I would take it even to a slightly different level and say that the Bible, Christian theology, the church culture, the church building, the church show, those are the hoes, and the congregation is the Johns.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah. And so that's the part of it that infuriated me from the very beginning, was I felt like that the pimps were pimping out, misusing good stuff. You know.
Sure.
Now it's a little trickier now because we don't necessarily feel like the stuff they're using is good stuff. You know, we're not quite as defensive of the Bible now as we once were. But I think you just made a fantastic case for how the Bible in many ways says one thing and they use it for another.
Right. Yeah. Well, one of the prime examples, sorry, I had a door closing behind me. My kids are going to Dairy Queen.
I'm so jealous of Dairy Queen. Kelly, let's go to Dairy Queen.
Yeah, they're going to Dairy. Yeah, they're going to Dairy Queen. They're like, we're going to Dairy Queen. I said, cool. I can use a small Reese's Peanut Butter Blizzard. Bring it back.
Absolutely.
You know, one of the things I think about when I think about all this is, do you remember when Joel Osteen had his offering stolen one Sunday morning and it came out to $600,000?
Sure, absolutely.
Right. Now, when we look at Joel Osteen, his net worth is $40 million.
And that's crazy that it's only $40 million because he sold like 10 million books the first time he threw one out. But go ahead.
Hey, I think if I look deep into my closet, I probably have a Joel Osteen book back in the day.
Oh, dude, I do.
You know,
I do.
Because Joel Osteen was someone I could listen to that wasn't all Jesus-y. He was more feel good. You know, he was the Tim Robbins of Christianity.
Right. No, you're exactly right.
And he was easy to listen to because he didn't slap you in the face with theology.
Right.
Right.
That's right.
And I think the reason he's doing so well is because a lot of people connect to that.
Well, you know, I tell you what it reminds me of, and this is going to sound demeaning when I don't really mean for it to be demeaning. But I had a friend, or someone who once was a friend, is not a friend anymore because they're Baptist and I'm atheist, and somehow that don't mix anymore. But whatever. I had a friend who got me into Amway.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Hey, if there is any pile of crap that I can drag Kelly DeWitt through, apparently I'm not going to miss any of them. You know.
Hey, if nothing else, you had a lifetime of cleaning supplies.
Yes, she did for quite a while. And
yeah.
The cleaning supplies were actually really good.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And so anyway, so this guy, he fought hard, man. He fought so hard to build up his downline.
Yeah.
And he put so much energy into it. I mean, he really, really worked hard. And he worked so hard that when he wasn't successful, I was discouraged. And I was like, I know I'm way too lazy to do what he's been doing.
Right.
You know, so if he's not going to be able to become a double doggone diamond, then, you know, there's no chance in the world for me.
Yeah.
You know, it's just impossible because I ain't doing all of that. No way. And so he eventually got discouraged, he and his wife both, and they quit. And he moved into finance. He moved into, you know, selling stocks and bonds and, you know, those kind of things. And I remember thinking, dude, that's perfect because what you're doing is you're just skipping the soap.
Yeah.
You know, what you were always into was money and making money off of money, you know, because that's all those types of things are really doing is just making money off of money, you know. And so I said, this was a great move for you. You just moved into money. Well, so how does that relate to Joel Osteen? Okay, when you listen to a lot of the other preachers that you couldn't stomach, but you could stomach Joel, it's because Joel just isn't selling the soap.
No.
He's just selling the prosperity without the gospel.
And doing very well at doing it.
And he's not necessarily selling the prosperity side the way that we normally think of the prosperity side, but he's the good relationships, happy days, good marriage, healthy kids, you know, not necessarily always hammering on the you're going to drive a Cadillac and you're going to, you know, fly a plane like me and those kind of things. Mm-hmm. But it's still pretty much that prosperity gospel mentality and promise, but it's just without all of the theological soap that you have to, the, you know, theological product that you have to push as well. And that's the reason why that so much of the church world came down on him. And they're like, but you ain't got no soap. You know, this is theologically illegal. This is, you know, you can't promise people their life's going to get better without also telling them they're going to go to hell if it don't.
Right.
You know, this ain't right. You know, so anyway, I'm so excited. I'm enjoying this podcast so much.
Well, Hidden Heathen said, I think the role of Dave Ramsey churches is interesting as well. Now, I was a huge fan of Dave Ramsey, and to some extent, I was able to get beyond the church and the Jesus stuff, and I actually used what he taught, and it works when it comes to budgeting and how to take better care of your money and everything else.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if I would call him a pimp. But I guess to some extent maybe he is. But
Yeah.
but when you look at what he's offering, and it's teaching you how to budget, teaching you how to get rid of credit cards and stuff like that, I can kind of stand behind that. And I know there's going to be some people that's like, "Oh, Bobby, you're so stupid." And and that's okay, because on my refrigerator is a budget that I learned how to do from Dave Ramsey. So I guess you could just call me stupid.
Let me tell you, Dave Ramsey and a handful of envelopes can save your butt.
Oh, yeah.
Where you just literally take your money and divide it up into envelopes, and when, that envelope's out, you're just out.
Yeah, when the money's gone, it's gone.
Right. And so I completely agree with that. Now, the reason that I get sideways with the Dave Ramseys of the world, at least they are sharing some actual good information.
Sure.
Okay. What always bothered me about them was that they were pretending that they found it in the Bible.
Right.
When you know that they didn't.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because you can read.
Right.
And so it's not in there. And the scriptures that they twist to try to make it sound like that's where they pulled it from, that's not what it means.
Right.
And so I stayed as a prophet. I stayed at war, because you've got it in our commercial where I say I preached against religion. I did. I preached against religion. And taking twisting the verses to support even good ideas like a budget, I felt like was hindering the church from knowing the real truth of those scriptures,
right,
and entering into the global prophetic movements.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so they kind of ticked me off more than some of the others did. Because I'd be like, just when you read that out of the Old Testament, let it be what it says, so that I can then learn what it really means.
Right.
Because it don't mean what you think it means. It got to mean something else.
Right. The Atheist said Larry Burkett was like that. Accounting with Bible verses. I kind of remember something about Larry Burkett. It was like, but like Bible budgeting.
Right.
You know, but I think the whole concept behind that was get out of debt so you can give more in tithe and more to the church. If I remember right, I could be wrong, but I kind of remember something about Larry Burkett. So yeah. There's always not always, but it's very easy to, with one hand, to slap them across the face and say, "Hey, you need a budget," and with the other hand, have it going down into their back pocket saying, "And whenever you make any extra money, it belongs to me." Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cheryl said, remember that BS a few months ago about how they couldn't be next to God, right? If they didn't fly on their own plane. The chat room has moved up and I can't finish it. But yes, I remember that, because there's a part in the intro where Creflo Dollar said, "I don't know about you, but I didn't fly here on Delta. I flew here in my own plane."
Right.
Right. Hence the $67 million G650.
Right.
Because he needs to go to Africa and spread the gospel.
Yeah. It is, there's no doubt about it that I can tell you what I really suspect is happening with these pimps. Okay. Yes, there is a huge amount of money to be made just off the church itself.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt about it. But they take this enormous amount of wealth that they collect and they go into business.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, they're already extremely fantastic geniuses at business before they ever get to that level. They've already got all kind of side businesses and other things going on. And so what that jet then allows them to do, it allows them to hobnob with the other people who own jets so that they can close deals, be found worthy to be in meetings that they wouldn't be found worthy to be in if they did not have that level of
opulence.
Blame. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly. Isn't that crazy that you went that way and I went the other way? Your vocabulary went to PhD and mine was down on the playground, you know.
No, it's a new word I learned on the internet today. I thought I'd use it, make myself look really smart. But see, one of the things you mentioned about businesses, I could be wrong, but I don't think that I am, because Creflo Dollar also has a recording company.
Oh, sure,
like absolutely. A record company.
Sure.
You know, so I think you're right when you say that they use that level of opulence. There's that word again. I feel really smart.
Ooh, that's a good word.
That is a good word. I can't spell it, but it's a good one. But they use that lifestyle to show other people how successful they are.
Sure.
You know, and then the people feel comfortable giving them their money to do this or that because look, the guy's got a $67 million plane, so surely he's wealthy. Well,
that's right.
But if you look at Creflo Dollar, really and truly, he's kind of at the bottom of the spectrum when it comes to 27 million. The only one I found below him was Billy Graham at 25.
Right, and what makes that so interesting is the only way that you can find those values is for there to be something that is forced to be reported, and the only things that are forced to be reported are the things that the IRS, you know, forces you to report. And so this is a very skewed representation of what they may or may not have.
Yeah.
A good example of that is the pastor in Des Moines. And I may be really, really off with my numbers. So if there's any Des Moines folks listening, I'm off. Please feel free to correct me. But the pastor of Des Moines, he only showed like $15,000. He got in a little trouble with the IRS because he was only showing like $15,000 a year worth of income. Now, granted, this was 20 years ago, but still, that wasn't much 20 years ago.
Yeah,
you know?
No.
And they were like, there's no way that you pastor a church this size and dress like you dress and drive what you drive and do what you do. And when you got to digging down into it, he had figured out a really clever way where he like sold no. So if I'm not mistaken, and please Des Moines people, correct me if I have this wrong because it's bad enough without me getting it wrong. So help me get it right. But there was these crafty things of like, renting your house or your furniture to the church, since they did not provide you with a parsonage,
right?
And it was like this double dip thing of like the church did give you that as your house, but they signed it over to you.
Mm-hmm.
But now you can come back and say, but I don't have a parsonage, and they can then rent it from you, and so that's literally income that you're getting that you don't have to show as income.
That's crazy.
If they pay they can cut you a check for your insurances and you don't have to show that as income. They literally would buy him a brand new Fleetwood Cadillac every 2 years. Brand new every 2 years. And the 2-year-old one would go to the assistant pastor. They paid for every bit of his travel. They paid for every bit of his living expense. They paid for all of his clothes. They paid for all of these things. And when I started kind of working my way through that math, I was like, do you know what your income would have to be for you to literally have $15,000 a year of mad money?
That's crazy.
30 years ago?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, $15,000 30 years ago. What? That's close to what? 50,000 today?
I don't know, but I'm going to say that's right.
I would think it was close. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds. Yeah. So just think about that. That I mean, of pure. I mean, we're not even talking about getting a haircut and you spend some of your $15,000 because that haircut, well, that hair,
that's covered
what
by the church.
You get it cut because of the church. We're not talking about, oh, you know what, I'd love to have that pair of shorts. No, that's clothes. That's covered by the church. Oh, you know what I'd love to do? I'd love to go out and eat, Italian tonight. Oh, no, that's covered by the church. I mean, what kind of frivolous thing are you spending $15,000 a year on when you don't have to pay for anything else? That's just amazing.
That is.
That is a huge amount of money. And so that is, it should make everyone in the secular movement a little happier with me for me to say, okay, there was a somewhat local pastor that was really a pimp.
Oh, trust me, we have them here.
Do you?
Oh, please. Oh, man, we got a local pastor here. He's a major pimp. He's got the biggest church in Savannah, right? Right. Broadcast on TV every Sunday morning. Trust me, big time pimp. There's only so many few Bentleys riding around Savannah. Mm-hmm. He's a pimp.
And he's got it. Yep.
He's a pimp. Yeah.
No, you're right. You're exactly right.
But Jerry, I think every major city probably has a pimp in them.
Oh, sure. No, I think you're exactly right. I think every major city. The deal is those big populations are able to support. There's enough people within that large population to support someone who has that type of operation going on. No, you're exactly right.
Yeah, and if you think about it, look when we talk about cities, right? And on my list, I'm looking at my list, and I think 3 of the people on my list is out of Texas. T.D. Jakes,
Wow.
Kenneth Copeland, and Joel Osteen.
Right.
Right? They're all out of Texas, and they're all in major places. T.D. Jakes, Dallas, Fort Worth.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
So, hell, Joel Osteen turned a football stadium into a church.
Yeah, basketball arena.
An arena into a church.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, you're exactly right. That's right.
So...
And what's amazing to me about that is we thought that church, Lakewood, the Oasis version of it, we thought that was successful when his dad had it.
Yeah, his dad did nothing compared to what Joel Osteen has done for that church.
And Joel turned around and did it in just like the blink of an eye. And it was because of using all of the pimping tools that were at his, command.
Yeah,
absolutely. And so in some ways, now you have to back up, and I know we're running late, so I'll ramble on. But in some ways, you have to back up and say, if it wasn't using God, and if it wasn't telling poor, sad people that they're going to get better and be less sad and less poor, if it was just selling widgets or something, then you'd have to give the pimps some props for their ability to work the system that obviously they didn't invent, but they walked into.
Yeah, and made a ton of money doing it.
An unbelievable amount of money. Now they're mentioning Rick Warren in the chat room.
He's
Go ahead. Did you get some numbers on Rick?
I saw them, but I didn't write them down.
Okay, and do you remember it being like a crazy lot?
Oh yeah, it's millions upon millions.
Okay,
yeah.
Now here's the interesting thing about Rick, and here I go again trying to tick off all of my new friends. The interesting thing about Rick Warren is that Rick and his wife, what do they call it? Reversed tithed.
Mm-hmm.
They calculated all the money that they had ever made from pastoring their church, Saddleback there in California, and they gave all of that money back to the church. Once his book, his book, Purpose Driven Life, was like second only to the Bible, type of sales.
He's 25 million, by the way.
There you go. And so once they hit that level of income, they turned around and they calculated how much money they had made through all of those years from the church, and they gave that money back. Now, is that a really big thing to do when you've already got $25 million? I don't know, but they could have not done it, and just kept it. Now, what I will say is that you talked about the turnstiles that people would have to go through and, swipe a card showing that they had paid their tithes.
Right.
Rick Warren and Saddleback Church, they are about as close to that, or at least they describe a scenario about as close to that as you can get in the Purpose Driven Church, which is basically Rick Warren's church building manual for all the wannabes who wanted to be as awesome as Rick Warren. And, guess which co-host of Hope After Faith, the podcast, has a copy of it.
I wonder which one.
The prophet. And but in that they basically say that they try to really figure out if you're really paying your tithes or not, and if you're really being consistent with your giving, because there's a difference between paying tithes and giving. Those are two different.
Oh yeah.
And if not, then that disqualifies you from different levels of acceptance within the church. You can still come and just sit in the congregation, but you're not going to hold a position or be considered a member if you're not regular with your tithes and offerings and so forth.
Yeah. Wow. Well, one thing about it, they have figured out and mastered a way to manipulate people into giving them a lifestyle that only rock stars usually live, and jocks,
Right.
So
they do, and now you have to back up, Bobby, and you have to say, right or wrong, there are consumers. There are Johns out there.
Sure.
These pimps may be hoeing the Bible and churches and theology and everything else, but there are the Johns. And so, where does all of the responsibility lie? Where does all of this, does the whole thing rest? Does all of the responsibility rest on the pimps? Or is it also partly the John's fault?
Can it be both?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it can.
I think it
can. There's definitely a demand. And so that's one of the reasons why members of the Clergy Project, when their conscience was teasing them with the idea of getting up one Sunday morning and just disclosing everything about their transition and blowing their lives apart and possibly, what they thought blowing the church apart and all that kind of stuff, I would say, look, just walk away quietly, just move away softly and quietly out of the situation, because as soon as you blow your life up like that, as soon as they can, they will form a search committee for a new pastor and replace you. They'll take your name off the marquee and they will replace you and forget you ever existed quicker than you will ever imagine.
Hell, they'll change the name of the church.
They'll change the name of the church, Bobby.
We know that for a fact, don't we?
Why did you have to bring that up?
Sorry.
I'm going to be crying
I'm
all
sorry.
night long.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I can't even take people who travel all the way from Georgia to come see my life. I take them on the Jerry tour, and I can't even show the First Community Church anymore.
Hell, you can't get them to stay awake long enough to see the tour.
Because they changed the name. They're so embarrassed of being in the New York Times. They changed the name of the church, Bobby.
It's terrible.
They changed the name of the church. I bet they even changed the phone number.
Probably did.
Now my business cards aren't any good anymore.
Your business card, like you need them. Oh, man. This has been so much fun.
I'm sorry I drug you out.
No, no, not at all. I think it's wonderful. I think it's a very interesting topic to get into. When you look at all the different aspects of church, and we covered the pastors, the prophets, and the pimps, and you look, and if you think about it, they all kind of blend together, and it's just a matter of which one are you. And it's just, I love this topic. It's a lot of fun.
It's a great topic. I hope we come back to it. And I know
sure
that we will, because there's so many times that, throughout Hope After Faith, the book, we bump into pastors.
Oh, yeah.
And every so often we bump into prophets. And every great once in a while we bump into pimps. But, Bishop Carlton Pearson told me after he read the book, I sent him an advance copy so he could do a blurb on the back.
Mm-hmm.
And, he says, where's all the, how did he say it? It wasn't where's all the sex and violence, but like, where's all the scandal and where's all the sex and scandal and stuff, Well, it exists, and only the listeners of the podcast will ever get it piece by piece, just a little bit at a time. but it is there. And so there's far more pimps than what I talked about in the book.
Oh yes, and trust me, I'm pretty sure in the future we will definitely get back into that topic. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. As we bring tonight's show to a close, we actually have 2 emails that I want to read. One is relatively short, and the other one's kind of long. Matter of fact, I think it's like a page and a half long, but well worth to read. So if you don't mind, Jerry, I'm going to take a few minutes and read these emails.
Please do.
And of course, if you want to send us an email, you can send it to hopeafterfaith@gmail.com. The first email says, "Hello, Jerry and Bobby. I just want to take a few minutes and tell you how appreciative I am of your podcast. I bought Jerry's book when it came out because I recognized the name. To this day, I couldn't tell you if I've ever seen him preach or heard any of his sermons, but the name rang a bell. I grew up in Irwinville, Louisiana, and went to a small Christian school, so that would most likely be where I heard the name, or maybe you guest spoke or listened to a tape, I don't know, but it's really not that important. Anyway, I finished the book in a course of a couple nights, and I loved it. It was one of the first atheist stories I've read that wasn't filled with militant atheism like Dawkins' work. That is something I really appreciate. Even though I am an out atheist, the, quote, if you believe in God, you're an idiot, unquote, thing really irks me. Y'all's podcast really is a breath of fresh air, and I think it's something that is needed in the secular community. That's about it. You guys keep doing what you're doing, and I'll keep listening. Thank you. I'm just going to use the first initial, J. So,
excellent.
Thank
so
you.
Good.
Thank you very much for that. This other one's kind of long, but it's well worth the read. So here we go. Jerry and Bobby. You know, I like that they finally added me on these.
You know, I'm starting to get jealous now because I hear more Bobby than Jerry.
I feel really special. They finally recognized that, wait, Bobby's part of this too.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I hear the word Bobby a lot more in my own house than I used to. So.
Good. There you go. I made an impact. Jerry and Bobby, I want to thank you for the time and energy you put into your weekly podcast. I have been listening since the first episode, and someone born and raised in fundamentalist Pentecostal family in a very conservative area of Southeast Missouri. There are many of the experiences described in your podcast and in Jerry's book that strongly resonate with me. I believe that each denomination of Christianity leaves a unique scar, as there are many variations and doctrines among them, particularly Pentecostalism, which often places a strong focus on so-called holiness through exclusivity and alienation of its followers by teaching them to come out from among them and be ye separate. I can't count the number of times I heard that scripture growing up. I also believe the experience of women within fundamental Christianity is unique due to the oppressive expectations placed on them. I found the restrictions that were placed on me in my youth have set me up for an adulthood full of social challenges that I don't believe I would struggle with otherwise. The misogynistic nature of Christianity is what led to the first cracks to develop in my faith as a teenager. Despite being saved at age 7, filled with the Holy Ghost at age 13, and baptized in water, I was being taught that in church and at home that as a female, it is my job to be subservient and submissive to the men in my life, who should be respected as the moral and superior leaders. Man, do I know what she's talking about. I remember my mother going through that. My inability to accept that God created me with the purpose of being inferior to someone else led to my resentment of the Apostle Paul and sparked frequent heated arguments between my father and me. Why would God give me access to his spiritual gifts if he did not want me to use them to my fullest potential? Why would he give me a brain with the same capacity for thought and inquiry if I was expected to just accept what I was told and should not be allowed to question the authority of men? Even then, I argued that while Paul may have been inspired by God, he must surely have been influenced by societal and cultural biases to make such an assertion. After all, he is still human. Of course, this type of thinking did not go over well with my dad, and little did I know at the time that was the first of many doctrinal pills I would be unable to swallow. My more recent non-belief has been further reinforced by parenthood. As a parent, I've come to view God the Father as an abusive and sadistic parent. What kind of parent purposely creates or even allows obstacles and temptations to be presented to their children only to punish them with eternal torture for failing to overcome the challenges he created in the first place. The most recent and most reinforced life event that was brought me around to the realization that I am an atheist is the implication by my father that my now ex-husband's frequent and ceaseless infidelities were a result of my being a backslider. Can you believe that?
Mm-hmm.
That they blamed, that is victim blaming.
That is some craziness there, isn't it?
That's victim blaming at its best.
It really is.
Or worst, if you want to put it that way.
Right.
Thankfully, I was in an emotional and mental state that allowed me to reject this absurd notion. Good for you. I simply could not accept a God who would punish me, let alone my innocent children, by destroying our family just because I could no longer buy into or make sense of his existence or Christianity in general. Either he did not exist and my husband was an emotionally damaged human being who made the conscious decision to hurt those who loved him, or God was an enormous a-hole. This led me to realize that I could not sit and wait for God to swoop in and help me out of this or any other crisis. So over the past year, I've been rebuilding my life, and I've been doing so without God. And I've never been healthier, happier, or more at peace in my life. No matter what happens now, I understand that my own resilient strength and perseverance is what will get me through, and I'm capable of amazing things on my own, not through Christ who strengthens me. So with all that said, I want to say thank you to both of you again for sharing your stories and experience so publicly, and for the therapeutic nature of your podcast. It helps me reflect on my own experience and identity, and identify the leftover particles of religion's brainwashing that remain in my subconscious. You know, we've talked about that, Jerry.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That it so much remains.
Yeah, it's those leftover things that we're still struggling a little bit at a time to get rid of.
That's right.
Which will surface at the most unexpected and inconvenient times. However, I now realize that is a struggle many people can identify with. And thank you, Jerry, for your book, as it gave me the courage to finally identify as an atheist. You know what? I'm with you. I've told you those exact words. I apologize for the lengthiness of my deconversion testimony, but I want to encourage both of you to keep up the good work. You're both doing great things and are making a difference for so many people. Sincerely, and I'll use the first initial, B. That is a long read, but let me tell you something, folks. I think that is where we've all been at one time or another, going through those stages. If you listen to last week's episode, we talked about going through those stages from saint to sinner. And that's exactly what that email just did. It walked us through those stages.
That's exactly right. It surely did. And as we said last week, every person is going to go through those stages or something similar in their own unique way. And they might not would ever come back and title those stages the same way that I have or that you would. But It's important to know that those stages exist in your life. And quite honestly, I think a whole lot about what this show is about is that really we're in another stage right now.
Sure.
We look back on those 5 behind us and we think, okay, that's it, I'm done. But in reality, this is another stage that we're going through that's still yet taking us to a better, more complete person.
Absolutely. And thank you, Kate. Kate said, best team going. Thank you.
I agree 100%.
All right, guys, we're starting this month. We're going to start that brand new segment called Stump the Preacher. You heard it in the commercial break. So if you think you have 3 things that it would take to stump Jerry DeWitt, call 630-7DeWitt and leave your name and these 3 things: a name, a location, and an item. Just please keep in mind that we are PG-13 and try to keep them as clean as possible. But if you think you've got what it takes, call 630-7DEWITT and let us know what you think you have that can stump the preacher.
I'm excited. So is that when is the episode? When do we do this? Now I'm getting all kind of nervous and tongue-tied.
Well, we haven't received any yet, so you may be safe.
Good. I may be safe.
You may be safe, but if I'm looking at my calendar, if we get them, that episode will be July 31st. It's the last Sunday of the month. Not July 31st, you Dippy. It'll be July 28th. Sorry.
That's a different show, Bobby.
I know it. I'm sorry. Be the 28th, folks, not the 31st. July 28th. If we get those voicemails, remember, we're going to collect them, and then I'm going to number them. And then if we choose yours, if yours is chosen out of the hat, and you stump Jerry, you get a very, very cool prize, and we will tell you about that as the month advances.
Yeah, that's fun. Oh, that's fun. That's going to be great. It's going to be great.
So if you think you've got what it takes, 630-7-DWIT, or you can use that number just to call us and say hi. We'd love to hear from you.
People are already disappointed that it's PG-13, Bobby.
Yes, Atheist Ian. We kind of crossed that off, but you know what? I kind of threw that idea at you in Louisiana.
Oh yes.
Oh, and y'all. He couldn't do it. All right. Well, we can now be found on iTunes, Stitcher, and of course on Spreaker. Now, speaking of Spreaker, guys, if you are enjoying the show, please consider going over to Spreaker.com and follow our show. Okay. Now, if you become a follower of this podcast, what happens is you get an email every time we go live, and you never know. There may be a time that Jerry and I just decide to do a spontaneous show in the middle of the week, like a Tuesday or something, and we won't announce it. So,
exactly.
So unless you are following us on Spreaker, you will never know. So go over to Spreaker.com, follow the show, and every time Jerry and I get a wild hair and decide to do a show, just an impromptu show, you will be notified. Also, keep in mind that if you like to listen to us on the go, they have a free Spreaker app that you can download on your phone, and you can listen to us while you are walking around doing whatever you do in normal day life.
Absolutely, and I just invented a term, Bobby.
What's that?
If we sneak a podcast in, and of course, as you said, they won't know about it if they're not following us.
They won't.
If we sneak a podcast in, that'd be a ninja cast.
A what?
Ninja cast.
A ninja. Oh yeah, we're gonna sneak in and just never know and just hit you right when you least
ninja
expect it. Well, speaking of iTunes, we did have a 5-star rating, Jerry. And
oh wow,
yes.
how did that happen? Did they listen to the show before they rated us?
Maybe. I hope so, because, and I'm going to spell this because I'll probably ruin it, but it's ANGIESSA. Angisa? I don't know. Anyway, I'm sure I destroyed your name, and I am sorry. Please forgive me. I'm Southern. There's a 5-star rating that said, love this show. So apparently they've listened.
Oh, good.
Bobby C. and Jerry D. put on a most lighthearted show that isn't afraid to address more serious emotional subjects. Lots of inspiration, with plenty of laughs, and always lots of love. Hope this one lasts many years.
I hope so too.
Me too. All right, guys, if you want to find the show, you can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Hope After Faith Podcast, on Twitter at Hope After Faith, and, of course, you can email us, hopeafterfaithpodcast@gmail.com. Do me a favor, Jerry, let them know where they can find that amazing book. And listen, guys, if you haven't got the audio copy, you got to get that. I listen to it a lot, so...
Well, by the way, did Miss Ashley allow you to actually listen to any of it on the way home the other day?
Well, I can tell you I listened to a lot more than she did.
God, what is it about me putting that woman to sleep?
I don't know.
I'm starting to get a freaking complex now.
Maybe you have such a soothing voice.
Oh, I'm sure that's what it is. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for uplifting my spirits.
Look, I even slowed it down to half speed to make you sound drunk, but it didn't work.
That still didn't. You were trying to make me sound more like you was what you were trying to do.
Now, come on. Maybe one day I'll be as smooth as you.
Oh, I'm no Toastmaster.
Hey, Todd, thank you. Todd said, just submitted my entry for Stump the Preacher. Thank you.
Excellent.
Todd, you will be number one whenever this happens.
Well, so of course people can find Hope After Faith at all of the major book retailers, particularly online, whether it's Amazon or Barnes & Noble or whichever one that you would choose to look it up in. And the audiobook, atheistaudiobooks.com, is where I would start to get the audio. It's an audible version. And then if you're just looking to have a little bit more of me in your life and added to that a little bit of Paul Aaron DeWitt added into your life on a daily basis, then just jump over to jerrydewitt.net. Don't be surprised when it takes you to our Patreon account. We really do try to put out something different every day of the week. Some weeks are busier than others, but we're pretty close at having something out there for every day of the week. And we would sure love your love and support.
Awesome. Well, as you can hear it, the kids are back with my blizzard.
Oh, I'm so jealous. Kelly, where's my ice cream?
Kelly.
All
right, folks. Well, as always, I can't say as always because we switch it around sometime. But this week we're going to end the show with a song that we did last week, and we've gotten some people that really do enjoy this song. It's called Last Prayer. It's by Chris Beeland. You can go to beeland.bandcamp.com and download his music. It is absolutely amazing. For the Secular Media Group and Hope After Faith, until next week.
Be brave, my friends.
It's lonely when you fade away in a lifetime, and it's lonely when you're out in space with no lifeline. And slowly then you turn around and you notice the length and the time when your heart stops beating. Oh, why won't you come settle down? Stop wasting your time and your mind going on believing. No, this won't change. Lord knows you know I can't tell where I'm going, to heaven or falling in hell are my predictions. I only speak what I have heard, and the sound of your words can do my soul while my soul is here just bleeding. You know my love, it won't hurt. Stop wasting your time and your mind going on believing. Oh, this won't change. And your God